I'm now in Beijing and I'm going to discuss a very delicate question with you guys, whether or not Chinese EV and in particular NIO is having the support of here the central government in China. So this is actually a good place to discuss it because of course Beijing is at the power of the whole country, right? And I've been to Shanghai, to Shenzhen and Beijing during my trip here, and unfortunately now it's coming to an end. So I'm now in Beijing and will be flying out to Berlin today, and still I will come back for a trip that will go more to, let's say, more remote places as well. Anyways, this is not part of this topic. Now what I want to discuss is, and I think I have some surprising insights here, or let's say views from my side, is the role and the involvement of the Chinese government in the EV sector. I think one of the argument that was made a lot of times is that actually NIO is kind of the little poster child of China when it comes to EV, and that therefore they are having preferential treatment by government officials. I think this is actually not the case. I think the central government really doesn't care too much about a particular company, and this might be surprising to you because you always think like, China is planning this, all of this is really like a strategic long-term plan, which it is in some ways, and but not in a way that you think. So I don't think that I really support one particular company. In fact, I think they couldn't care less about NIO. I think what they have done instead is that they have laid out this plan about getting to the leadership in the EV segment. They knew in the combustion engine market they could not compete against the Germans. So what they've done, they have planned very long and strategically for it in order to leapfrog the existing players. And I saw that when I worked already in 2010 at the German Chamber of Commerce here in Beijing, and those plans were already in place back then and executed in order to take over and create the supply chain, the battery industry and stuff like that. So this part, yes, this part is centrally planned in my point of view, or at least laid out. But I don't think that NIO is, high up there on the agenda. I always say like NIO is a special company out of China because that's mainly around the product. I think the product is unique in a way that it's for the first time, reaching a certain quality level. But I don't think that this is part of any plan of the government here to have such kind of a player. And therefore, I also don't think that they would come to a rescue in case that NIO wouldn't make it. Here it's actually fairly capitalist in this sense that, there you have like cutthroat competition with all of these players. And it's really tough to survive in this environment. And I think a company like NIO or any other company, any other Chinese company will really not be saved, or at least not the Chinese startups, which are really not, systemic relevant, one should say. Those will not be saved in case that they're going bankrupt. So this is really truly a market environment in which there's no poster child. However, where there is some state involvement is, of course, in the case of NIO, that they have a type of investment by the local government, the Hefei agreement. You all know about this if you follow this channel. There's a local government that is invested in NIO. However, what you can also see is that NIO actually bought back some of the shares. So when NIO was on the verge of bankruptcy and they made this deal with the local government, and afterwards NIO was getting traction again and they were in a financial position to do so, actually the management with Li Bin and so on, they made the decision to buy back some of the shares. So this is actually not in any way different to, for example, the involvement of the local state in Volkswagen, which has a 25% stake, if I'm correct. So, these type of government involvements exist anywhere in the world, and they are nothing special for NIO. And in a way, this is just normal business, and this is not really like any type of a special support by the state and anything planned here for NIO or any other manufacturer. What is the case, however, is of course that you have some of these state-owned companies, like let's say GAC or SAIC or FAW, which are partly joint venture partners with some of the Western companies, but also they're doing their own stuff. And these companies are they are rather more relevant because they are really large and they are therefore important for employment and so on. But the EV startups, they are really not. So this might be surprising for you that actually the role that the government is playing in this field is actually much milder and lower than one would think. And also there is no particular treatment for NIO in this case, at least in my point of view. Where they do have some support, of course, is in the policy area, because the importance of infrastructure is, of course, always a topic in China, and therefore they also want to highlight or support new technologies such as battery swapping. And this is where NIO did indeed get some preferential treatment. That, for example, there are subsidies, even though NIO has higher priced cars, they got an exemption here for those subsidies just because they have battery swapping. And that's because NIO is a player in that field, and because battery swapping is part of a government plan of creating this infrastructure and this technology, because that's how the government thinks they can set standards in a new industry. They can leapfrog not only the internal combustion engine, but also in terms of infrastructure and charging technology. Once they own that, they might be able to internationalize it, and therefore, once these are Chinese standards, then this is good for China in general, for the whole industry, not just for one player. But it happens as it happens. In this case, that's NIO. So you can see it's a little bit ambivalent. It's in one way very capitalistic and open market, and not with direct involvement of the state. But on the other hand, you have this long played out or long-term thinking and strategic thinking and plans, which are certainly there and which are certainly also helping some of the players, including NIO. So this is how I think about the role of the government and state here. Sometimes I even get those rumors about would, for example, the Chinese government step in and buy all of those NIO cars for government vehicles in order to replace, for example, Audi. I think this rumor has been around for quite some while, and while I do think there's a realistic chance that they might do it, simply because it would make sense. It would make a hell lot of sense for China to start using a Chinese vehicle for government officials, and that has just been, Audi cars. Black Audis in China stand for government official cars, and I think it makes a lot of sense for them to change that over time. But there's not only one brand that might be, relevant for this, but certainly it could be NIO. It would make sense, and this could certainly happen. But I don't think that there is the case or the argument for that this is certainly going to happen, and that company certainly will be NIO. So whenever you hear this argument, don't be overly excited about it. I think there is a tiny chance for it, and maybe I wouldn't be surprised to see some officials purchasing NIO vehicles, but it's not really like that. This is the poster child for the Chinese government. I think that especially the central government will not care too much about it. Whereas, of course, we could expect more support and more things happening, let's say, from a local government like Hefei, because they're actually invested in the company, right? And that makes a lot of sense. And frankly, the same support is being received by German companies, let's say like Volkswagen, that have also state investments in the company. So here's my take, a bit controversial, I know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. This was my last video for this trip in China. Thanks for watching and your support. And then please smash a like, share it, and consider become a patron where I have more exclusive content. Thanks for watching, and see you back in Europe.